Hello, dear friends, and thank you for inviting me to speak in this esteemed uh, World Parliament on Spirituality. And thank you very much to Dr. Yuga and all the organizers and everybody involved. It's much appreciated and honor to address you. Um, just a little bit of information about myself. I studied many subjects and lecture many subjects. In addition to being a rabbi and a certified, a qualified naturopath and homeopath, I studied originally engineering, then IT, then management, then psychology, and the list is quite long. I'm qualified in about 8 different disciplines, and I've worked in all of them. I traveled the world, more than 20 countries, and delivered hundreds of training courses and presentations worldwide, from management and compliance and anti-money laundering, oil and gas, renewable energy, and the list is quite long. What I particularly feel missing at the moment is the face-to-face contact. Videos are great, Zoom is fine, but the face-to-face contact. I've not been able to go on a cruise ship since the beginning of the year because of the pandemic, and I miss it a great deal. My wife and I have traveled for over 20 years in over more than 20 countries, and we've seen things that and been to places that most people dream about, but they can't get there from one reason or another, mainly cost. So I feel fortunate and privileged. What I'm going to talk about is the Festival of Tabernacles. Just to explain a little bit what the Festival of Tabernacles is, the connection with the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, which we hope will be rebuilt very soon in our days, God willing, and to interface with other cultures and other religions. I spoke in interfaith conferences, world consciousness, and so on and so forth. But one thing that a lot of people are unaware of is that the Jerusalem temple, obviously before it was destroyed twice by the Romans about 2,000 years ago, and beforehand by the Babylonians, and it was rebuilt, is that the temple, although it was very much a Jewish affair, run by the Jewish people, by the priests and the Levites, was very much an international project. And let me explain. First of all, when the temple was built, many nations contributed materials, expertise, particularly Egypt, and what is now Lebanon, the country of Hiram, the King Hiram, who contributed materials and expertise. And after the temple was indeed built, we had visitors and pilgrims from all over the world, not just Jewish people. They came in the millions. They brought gifts, they brought money contributions to buy the animals for sacrifices, and so on and so forth. Today we are missing the temple, not because it was the only or the most beautiful building in the world, notwithstanding the fact that other cultures and other religions had monumental and most beautiful and splendorous buildings. The Jerusalem temple had something very unique in it. It is said that whoever entered the temple came out a changed person. You couldn't have remained the same person when you went into the temple and you came out. Now, the Festival of Tabernacles was celebrated in the Jerusalem temple for 7 days. We brought 70 bullocks, 70 bulls as sacrifices to atone for the transgressions of the 70 nations of the world, in addition to which we also brought sacrifices and prayers for the atonement of transgressions by the Jewish people. There was an 8th day in the temple. It's called Shmini Atzeret, 8th day of stoppage or break, where God celebrated with us privately. Just like after the guests go home, God stays with his beloved people. The tabernacle is a symbol of peace. We are now building the tabernacle outside my house in the garden. It's a temporary structure, and we go out in the autumn just as the rains begin. And God could have asked us to go to the tabernacle in the summer or the spring, time of Passover, time of the summer is a beautiful time. It's a time of we received the Torah at Sinai, festival of Pentecost. But he deliberately asked us to go out in the autumn, not only because it's a time of the year where we gather all the fruit, all the produce of the field, and then we retire to our homes. The idea basically is to show a faith in the divine, that whatever happens, even when we are outdoors, we put our faith in the divine. Now, I like this opportunity to wish each and every one of you a happy universal Jewish New Year. Now, according to verifiable records, it's not a hearsay, verifiable records, our world as we know it from Adam and Eve has been around for 5,781 years. Now, it does not preclude other civilizations, other cultures, and other religions that go back thousands of years before. For example, the Indian religion, or religions, I should say, because they have different strands, or Chinese, or Asian traditions that go back thousands of years. We don't say they did not exist, or we don't preclude them. What we say from Adam and Eve, this is the year that we are at. As I said, according to verifiable records. If anybody wants to check it without listening to a rabbi who obviously is biased, like me, yeah. Objectively, you can read the book of David Rohl. David Rohl, R-O-H-L, is a leading archaeologist and very highly respected scientist. He looks a bit like Indiana Jones with a famous hat, which incidentally I have a copy of, limited edition. And he says that the world as we know it, this universe, not other universes, this universe as we know it, is around for less than 10,000 years. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story to make this point. I'll go back to Tabernacles. Once upon a time, two elderly gentlemen sit next to each other on an airplane, flying to Tel Aviv. So the son of one of them comes over and he asks his father if he needs anything, any food, any drink, any help. And then he serves his father. Then the second son comes and he does the same with his father, likewise. When the two sons went back to the seats, the first father asked the second father, he said, "Why does your son treat you so nicely, so politely?" He said, "My son is also good to me, but he's somewhat abrupt when he talks to me, when he serves me." So the second father says to the first father, he said, "Before I answer your question," he said, "let me ask you something. What do you teach your son? Do you teach your son evolution, Darwinism? Do you teach your son that we come from monkeys? Or do you teach your son that we are divine creatures, the handiwork of the Almighty from Adam and Eve? Most beautiful, the ever most beautiful creatures." So the first father said, "No, I teach him Darwinism, I teach him evolution," even though it's not proven, by the way, it's big hypothesis. So he said, "What do you ask? What do you teach your son?" So the second father says, "I teach him we are divine creatures, we are the handiwork of the Almighty from Adam and Eve." So he said, "What's it got to do with my question, the way my son treats me?" asked the first father. So the second father answered him, when your son looks at you, he sees a derivative of a monkey. When my son looks at me, he sees a derivative of a handicraft of the Almighty." And that explains the attitude of civilization and lots that's going on now. Coming back to the Tabernacles festival that we celebrate very shortly next week, on this weekend, the most amazing quality of the temple was to unify the world, like we're trying to do now. We're trying to unify different religions, different cultures. We don't judge anybody by the color of the skin, by their belief, Even we disagree, we don't condemn it, we don't go against it. We give 101% respect to that person. Why? Because to that person, his or her belief are as realistic and true as is my belief or somebody else's belief. So we must not condemn it. The only thing we must condemn is violence. If somebody wants to put a bomb under my car because I look different or I believe in something else, that's obviously a serious crime. The Tabernacle festival and the temple, the pilgrimage, brought people from all over the world, regardless of their belief. Yeah, Queen Sheba, when she came to see Solomon, the famous encounter, right? And she asked him a number of riddles that no other human being could answer. He had divine wisdom. King Solomon spoke to the birds, to the beasts, to the animals, to the demons. He was conversing with every creature on the universe. Many, many legends of King Solomon. For those of you interested in mysticism, of course, the King Solomon seals, and so on and so forth. But King Solomon answered correctly all her questions. So Sheba was not Jewish, and many other kings and queens that came over to Jerusalem were not Jewish. But they realized there's something very special about the temple, something that unified all the nations of the world. And indeed, some of the philosophers and ancient writers stated in old parchments, in script notes, that if the nations of the world understood the great importance and sanctity of the Jerusalem temple, instead of destroying it, they would preserve it because it created a holy atmosphere in the air. Having said all that, we do know for a fact, and that's recorded, the Talmud, the Mishnah, books of the oral law in Judaism, which cover many, many subjects, including science and engineering and medicine, don't hide the fact that towards the period of the end of the Second Temple, unfortunately, morals have deteriorated. It was inevitable that the temple would be destroyed. But coming back to the Festival of Tabernacles, we relive the unification of the temple in a little humble sukkah. A sukkah is a tent. You can see the skies from it. You can see the stars. It's permeable to rain. Rain comes through. It's not what you call a modern or super duper modern tent that you go camping with. It's a flimsy structure. Nevertheless, we go to remind us of two things. A, the trust in the Almighty that whatever happens, even in a flimsy structure, the Almighty creates a shield around us to help us. If we follow His will, if we do actions of kindness, we help fellow people regardless of the color of the skin, regardless what they look like, regardless what they believe in. This is a first unwritten commandment. It's not one of the 10 commandments, but it's the unwritten 11th commandment. I know many of you jokingly would say, "Thou shalt not be caught." But the truth is that the 11th commandment, maybe it's 0 before the 10, is don't harm any other creature or entity unless you're attacked and you have to act in self-defense. So we see it in the Tabernacles to remind us this. The second thing, the Israelites actually went through a place in the desert, in the Sinai desert, when they left Egypt, the Exodus. The place was called Sukkot, Tabernacles in plural. The other thing, many, many miracles happened in the 40 years that they journeyed in the desert. For example, at night time, they had the pillar of fire. Everybody who knows the Bible, read the Bible, a bit of the commentary, would know that many, many miracles happened. The desert floor, which was thorny and boiling, was air-conditioned. They had the clouds of glory over them, providing shade. Nighttime, the heating from the pillar of fire. So they had all central heating and air conditioning. The clouds of glories are compared to the tabernacle, to the sukkah that we sit in. It is airy, it is not sealed, it provides an interface with the world around us, and that's very important to remember. While it is true that every group of people, every religion, they feel comfortable living and talking and socializing with their own people. We can't help it. This is how the Almighty created human beings. He created the souls that feel affinity to another human being of the same ilk, as we say. But nevertheless, we must be able to interface with our surroundings. And that just doesn't mean human beings. It means animals, it means plants, any creature around us. So the Festival of Tabernacle indicates that we should, because we are able, we have this potential within us to live under the same roof. Even we have these different cultures and different beliefs, but we really have to work at it. And you look around the world, you see so many conflicts. This one attacks that one, this country attacks this one, and all the rest of it. And I asked myself a question. Having been a project manager and doing costing and estimating, before a country goes to war, does it actually sit down and calculate the cost of the war versus the cost of peace? And I have a feeling that if they did this calculation, instead of going to war, they would compromise. If you got a dispute on an oil or gas field, instead of saying your frigates, why don't you sit down and discuss a joint venture? Never mind who is right and wrong. Why don't we divide the oil and gas field 50-50? 50-50 is better than casualties. 50-50 is better than 20 or 0%. And 50-50 is better than the huge cost and the fuel costs and the logistics and everything goes with it that are necessary to go to war. Surely this is not rocket science. And I keep asking myself a question. Why those countries just don't do it? Now, it is different if we're attacked, like in the time of Second World War, when the Nazis, headed by Hitler, may his name be erased and his memory be erased from the world, decided to kill millions of people who disagree with his ideas. Not only Jews, many other people. Blacks and gypsies and anybody that didn't look like his ideas of a superior race. That's different. That's different. When you act to preserve your democracy, your freedom, freedom of speech and all the rest of it. But otherwise, really and truly, when you think about it, why do we have all these wars? It's because somebody twisted a cultural or religious idea to say that I should take away your territory because you disagree with me. And we have terrorism, increasing terrorism in Africa. It's a terrible plague. In Africa, in South America, Southeast Asia, you see all different groups demanding their own land, their own independence, their own this and their own that. And one wonders if and when this will ever come to a halt, right? It's all coming from the concept, selfish concept and misconception that selfishness should be imposed on another person or another country. This has never worked. Even the greatest generals in the world, like Alexander the Great, Napoleon, and many others, the great empires, could only rule by force, by intimidation for several hundred years, from a few decades to a few hundred years, depending on the particular empire, yeah? So you can see that empire ideas, as it's called imperialism, I don't like to use this sense, this word, doesn't work, sending people to the battlefield. But instead, if we do it with cultural means, with economic means, and so on. Now, China is exemplary in its success of taking over Africa, but it doesn't send armies. It sends financial aid, it sends incentives, it opens Chinese cultural centers in Africa. Some of them are subversive activities, yes, not only for the benefit of the Africans, first and foremost for the benefit of China. But this is not to say that a lot of good is not happening. China has managed to kill two birds in one stone. It managed to advance its interests in Africa and the rest of the world with plenty of cash to dish out, to take over infrastructures and to do projects. At the same time, the beneficiaries enjoy something that they could not do themselves. From this point of view, China is teaching us a new form of quote-unquote imperialism. No wars. You don't send any armies except the army of workers, an army of project managers and supervisors. I really suggest that the world should try to adopt this kind of uh, approach. And this is not a compliment necessarily to China, but to show that China have managed to find, almost unbelievably, a balance between abuse of human rights and eating live animals and sending the coronavirus to the world and doing some other heinous acts of inhumanity versus the great things they're doing in Africa and elsewhere. Yet it is the same nation. It shows us that one nation can do both. Yeah? From that point of view, I'm very hopeful and very optimistic that we celebrate the Festival of Tabernacles, which is called the Festival of Peace, because it brings all the nations of the world together. And I hope and pray and yearn, together with millions of other Jews and millions of Christians who support us all over the world, who love Israel, who love the Jewish people, and want to see the temple rebuilt speedily in our days, that we all celebrate together, and God willing that all wars, all conflicts will come to an end, to a happy end, and no more, as the Isaiah says, and other prophets, that will not have to lift a sword or any weapon against each other, and instead we should raise our glass and say l'chaim, to life, and enjoy ourselves in a most beautiful and tranquil and harmonious way of life, and most importantly, not treat the environment in the way we have been treating it for the last 250 years, to abuse it, to destroy it, and all the rest of it, because the world is a boomerang. The coronavirus is only one thing. We're getting many more problems and many more lurgies and many more negative vibes from the environment. It's sending us back what we dish at the environment. So when we talk about world peace and harmonious living, it's not just between humans. It's between humans and the environments and the animals and the creatures that live all around us. And this idea of uniformity and unison with nature is not an exclusive idea to Judaism or any particular religion. It's a universal idea that God enshrined in us right from the time of creation. What we have to do now, we have to learn much faster and act far more drastically and do it deeper and wider to bring this kind of global redemption to ourselves. And hopefully we won't be anymore in a lockdown and be able to travel, to see each other and live a beautiful life like the Almighty intended for us right from the beginning. I will bid you farewell, and may God be with us. Shalom.